Remembering Coleridge, a short story. A group of friends try to remember Coleridge's Kubla Khan. Gavin Fifth, to be frank, was slightly unstable. He tried to cut his head off with a handsaw. He failed in the attempt, but it left a nasty impression on his entire character. He was there nonetheless, and added some rare elocution. So too was Anus Bigley, that gateway of garbage, who seemed to follow me from venue to venue clad in his raucous apparel. Spud Norton and his girlfriend Pebbles were there too, but in the main, aside from some commentary, they remained mutually indulgent. The problem arose when the Chinese girl, Nancy Just Nancy, came home from an adventure. My friend Tony was polite and offered her a comfortable cushion. She almost directly laid down the challenge and requested humbled guidance. What was Kubla Khan doing in Xanadu anyway? She complained. It was a deep cultural conundrum, Coleridgean in proportions, and in contemplating it, it occurred to everyone all at once that it might help to recite the poetical context of the bold citation, just to check. We were mid-tiffin anyway. The afternoon was sunny and lugubrious, as it tends to be in late September, and wafts of primordial light illumined the wide-open windows, to say nothing of the doors of perception. The sweet scent of bergamot perfumed the steamy tisane, a loose-fitting poppy-seed tea. Nancy Just Nancy was new. She was studying molecular biology. For a Caucasian, of course, this would be creepy, but it seemed absolutely normal for an Asian. She kept her bedroom Spartan, suspicious of Antipodean staphylococcus. Her request was steady anyway. Somewhere she had encountered lines of STC, which is no bad thing for an earnest young lady of any race, along with assiduously avoiding Wordsworth. Most likely it was a come-on line from some ill-educated science nerd. In Sandy Doo did Kubla Khan, Gavin Fifth began. He said it with a tone of rich resentment, as if to say, "Why must I begin?" "A silver pleasure dome decreed," added Tony with considerably less intonation. After this there was a long pause, of Coleridgean proportions. Tea was poured. Nancy Just Nancy was just in time. "Good-o," said Pebbles suddenly. She was impressed. She said it was the first time she had ever heard a poem, ever, at any time in her entire life. And everyone thought, no doubt. Regrettably, the anus interrupted like the man from Porlock and mangled the next three lines beyond repair. Where elf in the sacred river swam, through caverns meaningless to man, into the sunny sea. At that juncture, everyone looked at me. The tea was soothing and contemplative, but was it my imposition to conjure recollections in my characters? Being narrator of this story is hard enough, I pleaded, and they accepted that. I did, however, offer the observation that less than 2 in every 100 of the British reading public, when recently polled, was able to recite a single line of Mr. Coleridge's tour de force of opiated visionary revelation, and I'd be damned if I would let such a situation prevail among my friends. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a smelly pleasure dome did see, quoted Gavin, perhaps, trying again. Donna Speckle was there, by the way. Donna Speckle was a unit. If you asked anyone in the entire district about Donna Speckle, they would say, "Donna Speckle, she's a unit." Even her mother said she was a unit. Sometimes people would call her Donna the Unit to her face, and she was happy to acknowledge the appellation. What exactly a unit might be is another question, but Donna was most certainly one. She was sitting on the couch, sipping her hot beverage, being unitary as usual. She always confused Coleridge with Keats and thought the stately pleasure dome dwelt in seasons of mist and mellow fruitiness, and was disappointed to find it wasn't so. "You're such a unit, Donna," said Gavin Fifth, shaking the head he had tried to cut off with a handsaw. "I think," said Tony next, heroically, "it is where elf the sacred river ran, and not where elfin naked lizards swam," as Anus Bigley had just then confidently aspired. Tony was a bricklayer and a gentleman, or near enough. He mustered the necessary biscuit, twice baking his mental cookies. You might not expect Tony to be the man with the biscuits, but they were nibbly and full of transports to lofty places. Pebbles said she was sort of getting into the naked lizards, but whatever. Nancy Just Nancy was not without her own insights. She had acquired a line or two. In fact, she was able to stumble all the way down to the Sunless Sea. This was a turnaround. "I can see the Sunless Sea," said Pebbles, suddenly delighted. "Isn't there something about a demon lover?" asked Spud Norton, proving that he was not all potato. "And sunny spots of scenery," said the Anus. "Greenery," said Tony. "Quite correct." Then a whole slab suddenly returned to Gavin's dawbled recollection. He jumped ahead. 5 miles malingering with a lazy motion of wooden scale the scary river ran, then reached the somethings measureless to man and sank kerplunk into the great big ocean. Anus Bigley jumped in. And with his turban, Kubla heard from far angry voices prophesying war. War? For a moment everyone felt stranded on Mount Abora. "Isn't it war?" said Tony. "I thought it was war," said Nancy Just Nancy. "I've always read it as war," said the Anus. "Otherwise it doesn't rhyme with far." He had a point, but not a good one. Anus Bigley often had a point, but it was never a good one. "Why would angry voices prophesy war?" said Tony. Pebbles was confused. "So there are no naked lizards at all then?" she pleaded. Leaving this juncture floating, everyone sipped their soothing steamer and rummaged through their long-lost brain files for a true word. To be frank, the brain files were somewhat ragged. Coleridge himself, of course, never finished anything and only peddled fragments. "That sunny dome, the caves were nice," declared Gavin, thinking it verbatim. "I don't remember them being nice," said Tony. "Neither do I," said Donna Speckle, being a unit. "Truth's a beauty and beauty's truthful," she added, going unhelpfully Keatsian again. "Wait on," said Bigley. "What about the dancing rocks?" It was true. There were dancing rocks. There was a waning moon and heavy breathing and dancing rocks. "I know about the heavy breathing," said Nancy Just Nancy. The science nerd had made sure to quote her that bit, confirming it was a come-on line. She said he did recite the entire opus and lingered when the earth was in thick pants a-breathing, but never explained who the Kubla was or why he went to Xanadu anyway. The fixtures of Western cultural references were often adrift in her Chinese microbiology. "I thought he was wearing thick pants," said the Anus, predictably. "Everyone always wants to know who brought him, and everyone blames me. You're the narrator, they say," which is true, but for some reason Anus Bigley follows me around and intrudes upon even my most polite of stories. "Thick pants," scoffed Gavin. We all agreed, though, that there was heavy breathing. It was one of the few poems in the English canon that had heavy breathing, and dancing rocks. Nancy Just Nancy observed that there was a Chinese poem that featured dancing mountains in quite another context. "Well, this one has a mighty mountain that momentarily was forced," said Tony. "No, it doesn't," said Anus. "Yes, it does. It's a frothy fountain," the Anus added. "Alliteration." "Frothy fountain," scoffed Gavin again, looking around for a handsaw. "Where did you learn your Coleridge?" There was no need to elaborate on this. "There was a demon lover," said Spud Norton, "and as he remembered it, there was a girl playing a guitar who was drinking milk." The soft lugubriations of the September sunshine made the most of the wide open windows, and it was as though everyone went into a short haze listening for the song of an Abyssinian maid. I eventually offered the further observation that only 1 in 200 college graduates these days could recite a single stanza of Christabel. Are all Westerners raised to recite Coleridge? Nancy Just Nancy wanted to know. It was explained to her that, yes, from the cradle, that these days such early remembrances of things past get as oblique as Proust. Some mode of cultural amnesia has set in. We should be ashamed, snoggled Tony at this point. Imagine forgetting the best lines of the Kubla. We just call it the Kubla in the West, Amos explained to the Asian. She seemed to think this was another quaint angle of slang. Ah, I see, she said, now culturally informed. Gavin by this stage grew sedate and agreeable, for he on honeydew hath fed. Can you remember it? The unit said to me. You're the narrator. I could, of course, but I didn't want Nancy Just Nancy to think I was giving her the come-on, and on the whole I was letting my friend Tony speak for me. He was near enough to a gentleman to know his Coleridge, I figured. Tony had one last try. And everyone who sees her there, all cry out, beware, beware, her flashy eyes, her flowing hair. Light a candle round her twice and close your eyes instead. But this made both Gavin and Bigley dismissive. Take no notice, said Gavin to Nancy Just Nancy. That's not how it goes. Nor was it how she recalled it from her one-time overhearing. She barely left her bedroom. This might also be creepy in a Caucasian, but was common to both molecular biology students and Asians. To have encountered a Coleridgean come-on was a curious event in her day. It seemed hopeless, though. Tony, I thought, made a brave attempt, but it was all mumble-thumbs like the bricklayer he could not help but be. Pebbles wanted lizards. Spud Norton thought there were undertones of rough sex. In the end, as everyone sat back in the sunbeams and sipped on their molten poppy seeds, I relented. All right, I said. I'm the narrator. This is how it goes. Poppy seed tea is a poetical lubrication with mnemonic calibrations, especially on a sunny afternoon. I cleared my cloudy sensorium and began with the foreword, just to put Amos Bigley in his place. A vision in a dream in a memory, lost and found and lost again and again, it explained. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Elf the sacred river ran through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. So twice 5 miles of fertile ground with walls and towers were girdled round, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree. And here were forests, ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. But oh, that deep romantic chasm which slanted down the green hill athwart a cedarn cover, a savage place, as holy and enchanted as air beneath a waning moon was haunted by woman wailing for her demon lover. And from this chasm, with ceaseless turmoil seething, as if this earth in fast thick pants were breathing, a mighty fountain momently was forced, amid whose swift half-intermittent burst huge fragments vaulted like rebounding hail, or chaffy grain beneath the thresher's flail. And mid these dancing rocks at once and ever it flung up momently the sacred river. 5 miles meandering with amazing motion through wood and dale the sacred river ran, then reached the caverns measureless to man, and sank in tumult to a lifeless ocean. Amid this tumult Kubla heard from far ancestral voices prophesying war. The shadow of the dome of pleasure floated midway on the waves, where was heard the mingled measure from the fountain and the caves. It was a miracle of rare device, a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. a damsel with a dulcimer in a vision once I saw. It was an Abyssinian maid, and on her dulcimer she played, singing of Mount Abora. Could I revive within me her symphony and song, to such a deep delight 'twould win me, that with music loud and long I would build that dome in air, that sunny dome, those caves of ice, and all who heard should see them there, and all should cry, beware, beware, his flashing eyes, his floating hair. Weave a circle round him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread, for he on honeydew hath fed, and drunk the milk of paradise.